Thank you. First, thank you, Matthew, for the invitation and welcoming me to join you this evening meeting of your club meeting. I'll be sharing with you some very general sort of information about my experience from attending the Peace Fellowship course that was taking place early this year in Uganda, Kampala, at Makerere, but also with some contextual facts of what the course was aiming to do. And you probably would see some pictures that reflects the activities that were taking place, but also just general overview of what was happening. Just go to the next slide, please. These are some of the areas that I will be covering during the presentation. Just general experience of the from the fellowship, as I said. My journey as a South Sudanese coming to Australia, and what I intend also to continue doing to support peace and development back home in South Sudan as a Peace Fellow. And then from there will be the conclusion of what I think is also was reflecting from the course that I had attended. Next slide, please. So the Peace Fellowship experience comprised was two components. We had on-site learning program, and then we had the field studies sort of program that allow us to go outside Kampala, or probably outside the university, to the suburb within Kampala, where we have seen and learned the experience of the community who are living in a different, very poor area. Next slide, please. So the on-site learning program comprised with 5 modules, and these 5 modules deliberate on various sort of concepts, change processes and structures of government, and how this contribute to undermine peace, but also promote peace at a different level in Africa context. Module number 5 stands out very well for the fact that it context is fixed across the other 4 modules, and that is a positive peace workshop. I deliberately choose to focus very much on this simply because it provides platform for countries, peaceful ones and the other that are having negative peace, to reflect on its content and how they can really improve their governing and how they serve their nation to be peaceful. Next slide, please. This picture here might not be new to many of you, but it is what exactly portrays a model of achieving peace. So we have learned that, and when we look into how this positive peace module with these 8 pillars contribute to achieving peace in different countries, it was very helpful. It was very helpful. Next slide, please. On the components of this experimental learning that we had, the activities that we have undertaken outside the class, we visited some sites in the city of Kampala where we have visited young African refugees for integral development. It is an organization which was formed by refugees who were living in the city of Kampala to help the urban refugees, because there were a lot of refugees who migrated from the neighboring country. And instead of them living in the camp, they came to the urban side, and they're still living under difficult circumstances. So we visited their site where they had to be supported and learn from their experience. It was very reflective of the challenges that the refugees are facing, even not only in the city, but also in the camp. We also visited Maganyu Youth Development Link. It is a local-based sort of voluntary organization formed by Ugandans. They're looking after the street children who are living on the street without the supervision of their parents. We also visited the Interreligion Council of Uganda and learned from their sort of work and how they're supporting the social cohesion and peace and developmental activities that are needed very much by Ugandans. Next slide, please. The purpose of visiting this urban sites was to learn from their experience, the disadvantaged people. And as you can see from there, on that photo, we met of those refugees as a peace fellow. They were from different countries of Africa, some from Somalia, some from South Sudan, Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, and it was a mix of people from different countries surrounding Uganda. And they were very much living under hardship. Access to health was so difficult. The human right is also very limited, understood by the local. They were sharing with us that even access to employment too was so difficult. They don't access employment. Even if one got employment there, they don't get equal payment as the local people can get. Next slide, please. So this is the visit that we paid to the Interreligion Council, but also as a part of Magonyu, which is the organization that look after the state children. That photo there, the first one of the mosque, is the Gaddafi Mosque that we visited after we met with the interreligions. They seem to work very well. They have a very common agenda, objective sort of agenda on how a unified society of Ugandans can also be rallied toward supporting of the government. And they tend to really have a common voice to advise the government of not really acting in a way that could further divide the community. This is what they share with us. And we have seen some of their publications, and they speak volume to how they would really advocate for peace and social cohesion in the community of Uganda. The second photo there is the one that we took after we met with the disabled people. Those of young ones, the old ones, middle-aged. It was so devastating seeing how they're coping with the life in Uganda, busy street in Uganda, with no accessibility in terms of how they can make their way around. seeking for the support or even getting food somewhere, it's very difficult for them to move around. And what this organization does, as we heard from them, is to recruit some individual from their group to knock door in some of those suburbs to look for those disabled people who might not have had the opportunity to access the service they provide, so that they can recruit them and support them with the need, with the needed that they require. Next slide, please. Yes, these are two photos that are important. The first one is that we met with the actual street children. And they are the street children, the street uncles, the street aunties. What they said, what we were told, is that those street aunties and uncles were first the street children. They grown up on the street. They have children on the street where they have very limited access to proper accommodation and food and health. They probably will have children. And then their children also follow the same path, living on the street with no proper support for food. After we met with them, we met with the youth representative from different counties within the city center of Uganda, where they express frustration, but also need for change and recognition of supporting young people initiative. They have acquired good education, but no employment opportunity that could cater for their transition to become independent. And that they were so disappointed to some of the government representatives that accompanied us. And but it was very healthy sort of a debate between them. What we have learned is that there needs to be a proper mechanism to provide those young people with the support they need so that they prosper. Next slide, please. This is the overall reflection of the challenges facing the urban community based on our reflecting from what we have heard from the members, but also see. They are very poor. I mean, they're living under hardship. Access to health care is very challenging. It depends on how much you can afford, and without having food, you probably will be thinking of having food first than being thinking for having access to healthy care to treat yourself or members of the family. A poor infrastructure. I mean, the hours that they were living, because we visited the very congested size of the suburb, where the structures of those houses, the sewage system, and access to the road where they were traveling from there, especially for the disabled people that I've mentioned previously, is very difficult for them. And what we have also learned, and I've learned also, is that those organizations that are working for this disadvantaged group lack resources that would enable them to deliver proper services to improve the livelihood of those people. Next slide, please. This slide reflects on the field study that we have undertook outside the city of Kampala. We visited 4 areas, the Kasese in the west, Ngulu in the north, Bididi in the north as well, and Bududa in the eastern part. The purpose of having this, paying this visit is to understand the conflicting nature of those areas, but also how life is for those individuals, those communities, and how this affects peace in those regions. What else can be done? Next slide, please. We visited Bidibida refugees settlements base camp in the north, and we were told that the population there is so high. We met with the representative of the office of the prime minister, advising us that the camp is the second largest camp after the camp in Syria. And the demographics within that camp were mainly South Sudanese and some from Burundi, some from Congo, but also with some Somali as well. You can see us standing there. I was standing among them. As a former refugee, it reminds me to the life of the camp that I departed from more than 20 years ago in Ethiopia. Exactly what it is when I get there. The resilience of the community there was so amazing. But it also reminds me of the need of peace all the time, because people who always suffer usually are those mothers and children, some of the disabled people who got nothing to do with politics or not even talk about the tribalism, but they become victim by default. Next slide, please. We pay visit also to Gulu. Gulu is the northern part of Uganda, and it is the regions which was very much devastated by the conflicts that happened between Uganda government and the LRA, Joseph Kony sort of faction. That region was so affected so much. We met with 3 groups. One of the group were taking a very practical approach, rehabilitating the community from the trauma that they went through. They tend to really approach the community development through investing in psychosocial support, but also embracing some traditional, cultural, structural sort of practice to ensure that local own the process, the transition from the war experience to a proper healing of the community. But where we stood there, as you can see us standing, those are the fellows. We met with some of the women who were abducted by Joseph Kony army. They were 12 by age when they were abducted, and they came back when they had 3 to 2 children after they were taken away. And what happened when they returned to their home, they were rejected by their parents because of the link they had with the rebel in the region. That we don't need you, you were part of the rebel, it has destroyed our community. Even if we were to embrace you, we will be targeted by the Uganda government. The house that I stood there nearby is the first home that they built when they were returned from Kampala. And that area were given to them by one of the whole lady because they were rejected by the community and their parents. But one of the lady accepted them. and said, I still love you. The very interesting part of their testimony is that they tend to forgive instead of holding that sort of anger and disappointment to their parent and to the government, to their community. They tend to embrace peace, forgive, so that they are free inside, instead of having any sort of grievances against whoever reject them, whoever kidnap them. They tend to embrace peace so that they live normal life. One of their sons was the interpreter when we met with them, and it was very overwhelming to see one of their children also graduate from the economy in one of the universities in Uganda, and was the interpreter, because they were unable to communicate, to express their own feeling, their experience to us or to whoever want to talk to them and hear their experience, but also rely on the interpreter. Next slide, please. We also visited the western regions and the east part. The photo below there, we visited Queen Elizabeth National Park. It's a very interesting location because that region there has a very high population. The resources are very limited. It is a mountainous region, but it's also bordering conflicting country, Congo, Burundi, the Great Lake regions where problem is occurring. So there was a lot of conflicts from the border, but also competing interests on resources and the land acquisition. Over there, you can see a photo in the red. It's the meeting that we had after we depart from the national park to back to Kampala. We met with the Great Lake Peace Center representative, a group that is advocating for peace, but they have embraced a certain sustainable goal that they are advocating in the community over there, health and peace building. A peace building effort that they were undertaking were very crucial, given that they connect themselves to the local structures, especially the kings. There are kingdoms in that region who are competing for power, competing also for the territorial acquisition. But also, given the limited resources, especially water and the land for cultivation, this structure influences the situation a lot. So they tend to really maneuver to bring to the understanding of these leaders to advocate peace and sustain unity within the community. The relation of that region with the government of Uganda had deteriorated very much. And they have expressed the very crucial activities that they are doing that help the community to mediate, facilitate the connection between the community and the government of Uganda. Another photo that you have seen there, we visited the east part of Uganda, the landslides area, where we visited the community which was devastated, I think sometime in October last year. A big rain had occurred in that area, rain for more than 3 days, and the mountains had the landslide. It has killed a lot of people below, along the mountains. It had occurred a number of times, and it has been really killing people there. But the area is very fertile. Whenever community tend to relocate their home, they find it very hard to sustain their life whenever they live in that area. So the recovering process, the emergency and evacuation mechanism that the government were taking place, put in place to help this community, were the central interest of our visit, to know from them what is it that you do as a precautionary measure to help you mitigate this potential risk that has been killing your people. And we have provided feedback to the Makerere University Department of the Environment and Geology. Next slide, please. And again, these are reflection of what we have learned there. Poor health is obvious. Poverty, although they tend to have their own farm, cultivate their own crop, the poverty and access to health facilities was the obvious sort of a challenge. As I mentioned, the territorial dispute between ethnic group and the kingdom, given the limitation of the resources there, was also emerging. The border conflicts where armed influx from this region of Congo and Burundi were also coming to the community, and they caused concern to the local people. The environmental factor, as I've just mentioned, this landslides and so many other climate factors also are the reflection of the experience of those communities. Next slide, please. So coming to my journey, as I came to Australia, I came to Australia in 2001 as a refugee from Ethiopia. I was in Ethiopia and spent in the camp 11 years before I come to Australia. Since then, I had the opportunity, as I was provided the opportunity by Australian people, Australian government, to access education. I finished my degree and my second degree and some few diploma. And then I had to involve in organizing the South Sudanese community to have the proper structure to be able to have a collective voice that represent their community, to address their need and interest in a way that give meaning to their participation in sustaining this country move forward. I have also hosted a number of social cohesion activities, peace building activities. What we have had before 2013, we were focusing on healing and development, national healing, dialogue and developments. So as a diasporans, we were focusing on looking toward how we can also share the experience we have here in Australia, from Canada, US, UK, as a South Sudanese diaspora, to help in nation building back home. So we have been really organizing. I've been part of central to organizing conference to do with peace building and development here in Australia, which has been attended by a number of people and have always generate positive feedback, which we have been working on to achieve. Next slide, please. Now, given that activities that I've involved, one of the things that I also wanted to do, and it is a reflection of many of my community members and people that see the importance of what we can do here from diaspora, but also back home, is the initiative, social change initiative activity that I have seen wanting to do. This is what I am working on now, to establish church and community radio. The community is very fragmented. and they are back home. And the need for it to have a platform where they dialogues, they communicate their differences, but also promoting peace and development is very much needed there. In some part of the South Sudan regions, there is a significant presence of some communication facilities, which has been established by NGOs to help them communicate with the community, either at the time when there is a devastation as a result of war, or a certain crisis, is it a community, intercommunal sort of conflicts. They use that to communicate with the community. But the region that I am thinking of establishing this church and community radio at has been very much affected by the current civil war crisis that is happening in South Sudan. And the goal is to reintegrate and harmonize the community relation through providing community a platform for dialogue. Next slide, please. These are some facts that I want you to know when I talk of South Sudan. Some of you, you would know, and some may need to share this with them. This picture with the things yellow and the green is exactly the map of South Sudan and how it has been divided into 3 regions, but it also has a 10 states. So the Fing region with these 3 states, Unity, Jonglei, Apanal, is what has been affected very much by the conflict that is happening right now. It was also the region where before South get the Comprehensive Peace Agreement in 2005, it was the region where the rebels against Sudan were based very much because it's close to Ethiopia, and Ethiopia was the supporter very much of the rebellions that South Sudanese were waging against Khartoum that lead to the succession, also the signing of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement 2005. So it has been still also affected by the current war, and this is where I wanted to establish that sort of church and community radio at now. The second picture there tell you exactly how war affect that region in 2014. You can see the number of people displaced during that time, and that number now has changed. Some of them might not still living, and some might have traveled to a different region, and some might still there in those countries. It was a very I don't know, a volatile sort of environment in which the community in that region were going through by then. Next slide, please. So in 2018, after the war, let's say the war broke out in 2013, and then in 2015, they signed another peace. That peace were to be implemented by the return of the opposition to Juba, the capital city of South Sudan, in 2016. By July 2016, then they had a disagreement. The leaders had disagreement. So they had to fight again, which they characterized the fighting they had in the presidential palace as a dogfight. They had that dogfight there. And then they went on pursuing themselves by pursuing war. But 2017, they spent this leading South Sudanese to this dividing sort of rule. 2018, they revived the peace agreement, which were broken in 2016. So the revitalized peace agreements signed in 2018 proposed 5 by-president as a way of resolving the problem between the leaders. And those leaders, 5 of them, were the members of the ruling party, which was the rebel movement structure that were leading the rebellion against Khartoum. So when we succeeded from Khartoum, they assumed that leadership, but they had power struggle within the movement, within the party. And so all of them were claiming to be legitimate, claiming legitimacy. To have them being part of the leadership, they agreed to have all 5 by-president. The president with the hat on, and they say the first by-president whom he check hand with, and the other 5 other by-president. So I think there's one missing there, because there's a 5 by-president with the president, 6 of them. Whether it is a solution to peace agreement is yet to be realized, because at the moment, most of the protocol of the peace agreement are yet to be implemented, especially the security arrangement and the hybrid code. The hybrid code was talking of justice, and they were the one leading the war. And this code were to really bring them to the table to be questioned. Either they will implement this or not is yet to be known. It's still a very disabled sort of a process that has no optimism for it to be realized. And this is a very challenging peace building activities. Next slide, please. So the social change initiative that I have shared with you, we believe that this will promote, for it to be achieved, it will help and also contribute to achieving peace in Sudan through supporting and promoting these 4 pillars of peace building. Having the platform for communication would allow for the free flow of information in their own dialects. As a community that is very diverse, we're thinking of establishing this and recruit members from different ethnic groups at a different time to have a voice promoting the same message of peace, to hear what needs to be done. We thought also, if this peace to be implemented or promoted through this social change, we should be able to see a good relationship between the community, which are a very great pillar for the peace building. They will also be able to accept themselves as acknowledging that their existence as a diverse community in South Sudan is so important. And when there is acceptance there, free flow of information, good relationship within the community, we would see that the economy, the traders, would be able to move, and that the sound business environment will also be facilitated. But we're also thinking of promoting this SDG, goal 16 and 17, that talk about peace, security, and good governance, but also the goal 17 that talk about partnership. It's a collective response for all responsible actors to promote working together for the sake of humanity. So having this social change initiative, the community radio, would provide platform for so many things to be addressed and improve the livelihood of the community there. Next slide, please. So this one here is the conclusion that I feel that the course was so wonderful. It has really demonstrated and highlighted so many wonderful contexts that I think if you were to work on them, we and when I said we, the collectively, but also can affect change in many parts of Africa. The positive peace model appeared to be a very wonderful. I personally see it as a practical thing. It's a collaborative in nature of calling for all wing of the society, wing of the government to respond and work together in a way that improve the livelihood, focusing on improving the livelihood of the community. I think it is wonderful. The community of Uganda, as I visited them, they were so lovely people. I never been to Uganda, but I feel the way I see them were lovely people. I don't have much knowledge of how their government is operating, but I think if the way they are is translated into their function in the government, they would enjoy the peace there. I have also seen that their understanding of the Rotary principle is so high. I have attended a number of Rotary activities through my host counselor, because most of us who were the Peace Fellow were allocated for a local host counselor who will guide you, also taking you around to different functions, introducing you to new things. So having attended a number of Rotary functions, I have realized that the Rotary principle have very much understood by the Ugandan community. And I think it can also be used as a model to help other African countries understand the Rotary approach to development, to peace building, but also to health and economic development. Somebody, Matthew has a hand there. So I suggest as a last point from this conclusion, as I've seen that many of us are thinking of doing a wonderful activity that could impact change and in those societies that we aiming to deliver them at. But our capacity is very limited. And I was just talking about myself, very limited. So should there be a willingness to sponsor activities such as this, I would be very much appreciated. And I extend my hand for support to goodwill people as the Rotarians. Next slide, please. I thank you for your listening. If there is a question, I would be happy to share.
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting presentation. I think we're all impressed by what you've done so far. I think Richard had the first question. You're on mute, Richard.
I must admit it's a double question again. Is South Sudan as a country accepted in the UN and acknowledged by other countries around the world, or is it one of these countries that isn't a country?
Thank you. it was accepted by the UN. In 2011 is when the referendum, which was the provision from the Comprehensive Peace Agreement signed in 2005, were implemented, delivered. So the world accepted it. It was recognized by UNs and many part of the world. It is the very last young nation now on earth.
Yeah. And the refugees in Uganda, are they able to go back home, or is it still unsafe for them?
It is very, very unsafe for them. Even for those who were still in the camp, we visited the Bizibide refugees camp. The representative of the office of the Prime Minister were advised us that the refugees were always eager to hear how things are going back home, wanting to go back home. But there's no way of going back. I think not really going very well. They hope for peace to return home so that they can go back.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no political will to see that coming and being facilitated.
So that means the government is still unstable, or is it?
It's still unstable.
Uh-huh. Thank you.
It's okay, Richard.
David, I think you had a question.
Yes, and Peter, this might be a very big question, because I understand your group was all people from within African nations came to your peace course for your year, and that is the aim of the centre in Kampala. Thinking back back on the slide at the positive peace pillow, and all the things that one can try to tackle to generate positive peace, did your group get to a point of thinking, what is the first thing we could do to try to start generating some peace in Africa, between African countries? Where do you start? Well,
we had a very interesting conversation reflecting on that sample of positive peace. Some of us were thinking that as it is the approach of the positive peace, all 8 pillars play a role in terms of sustaining a functional society. But in a situation where Africa is at the moment, we had the view that having a well-functional government at the beginning of things will help facilitate the other pillars to be functionally operating, so that they can later become equal in terms of in the effort of sustaining the society in the equal manner. So having a well-functioning government was an obvious option that we think to begin with, because if we were to compare Kenya and Australia, you would say, yes, there are differences there, but Australia would be totally worse off than comparing them to Kenya. So well-functional government, to come to your question, was the obvious option.
So there's no point in trying to do health, education, etc., economic development, unless you've got the functioning government over the top of it.
Our argument was that you can try to do the effort for health, economic development. They will still be devastated by the leadership that is very reckless. Unless you have the right leadership to facilitate that, then you will be able to have a sustainable health system, a sustainable sort of economy, sort of a structure that is not corrupt, that is not used for nepotism. That's what needed first before we go for all these valuable structures that can change the society.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With regard to your initiative, are you looking at returning to South Sudan for a period of time, or are you looking at running from here?
Well, I am thinking of going back for some time and deliver that. If I were to, now I'm working for a community here to get their support to be able to see how this can be delivered there. The environment there now has become very unpredictable in terms of peace, but the radio prison is very much needed. It's very much needed to not only to have a platform for communication. It is also important to promote that message of peace so that community members, the grassroots, need to have access that in their own language. I want to go back home soon if I can get the resources that I need.
What do you see as the biggest obstacle for you apart from sponsorship?
Well, what I very much see now as the bigger obstacle, of course, the resources. Access to resources is the bigger limitation to my move to implement that. I have developed the project very much. Probably will need a bit of contribution from whoever wanted to see what it is and how it can be done, but also mentorship, because there are people who have worked in this field for a while, and that I need that sort of a guidance and move forward in terms of doing it in a way that it's not being delivered in isolation of the international approach, because this is a part of what has been done previously. So I need mentorship and resources. Matthew,
thank you.
You are muted, Matthew.
Sorry, I was just saying Stella had a question as well.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, man, for visiting my country, Uganda, and having a chance to do your course from Uganda. I just want to know, I have two questions to ask you. Uganda has been in a lockdown for the last 2 years. I'm just wondering how you're able to travel around, yet you're not a frontline worker. How did you manage to travel around? Because it seems you went all around Uganda, which was so good, but I just want to know how you're able to do that. And two, what do you sum up with, I know Rotary tends to keep away from politics and, don't talk about it, but as an activist about Ugandan politics, what do you have to say about the recent elections in Uganda in terms of peace? Because this is about peace and understanding. What do you say about elections and the way peace was maintained? Thank you.
Thank you. By the time when we arrived in Uganda, there was no major ruling or restriction imposed by the government to limit the movement of fellow to visit different community in Uganda and in outside the city. It was okay. So the lockdown were imposed 2 days after I left. I was in quarantine here in Melbourne. By the time we were in Uganda doing these activities, things were all right. But there were curfew. What we were facing, it was curfew that limited people movement at night certain time in the evening, but was not that a factor to our movement because we were doing our thing, visit in the afternoon. So we were all right. And whenever we were trying to move to any particular place, we were always given sort of a letter that introduced what we are aiming to do and where are we going. So there was always a permission. We were very thankful to the government to allow us to come to Kampala, Makerere, and study this thing. So there was no much restriction in terms of movement in the cities or around the country because there was no lockdown, but curfew that happened at night. In terms of your second question, we were even conscious after we come to discuss this, and because we said when we're talking about peace, it doesn't mean that we don't have to tell the truth. We have to reflect on the nature of things that causing conflicts, and then talking about solution. But we need to look at them in a critical lens. But what we have seen so far, as a reflection from the election that had happened this year, I think there is a lot of work that need to be done by the community. The structure of the government is very determined to maintain the status quo. But how that will translate or facilitate a transition to a proper or to achieve a proper democratic, peaceful nature of people of Ugandans. It's up to the people there. What we have also learned, because in our class activities, we had a lot of very high profile visitors or speakers from the government coming and talk about human rights, good governance, security, all this. And when they come as speakers, you can see them talking highly of what needs to be done. They do acknowledge it. But to who can start to put this bell on the necks of the cat is nobody knows. But what we have also tried to do as a peace builders is that we tend to take this thing of defining the role of peace builders. Peace builders are proactivists. They're not activists. So they assess and investigate things and then consult proper a platform of what needs to be done before things get escalating. So that's a very key approach of peace builders. Be proactive. Study the situation. Intervene in a way that normalize and harmonize the situation. But when it becomes politically waging muscle, you see activists jumping in. And this is where we tend to be different to the activists and the peace builders. So before things get bad, and even after they become very nasty and get out of hand, peace builders too will tend to come back after the conflicts occur to restore the harmonious nature of the society and kick off the developmental activity that will restore the livelihood of the community. But there is a need for people of Uganda, for which they have also understood to take. And I think the best way that they are taking it, which I have not seen from the example of Kenya, is that Ugandans tend to approach this collectively than dividing themselves through tribal lines, which is a very good thing. And we hear that a lot from Ugandans, and even from some of the government official who were also attend our session as the guest speaker. So that negative piece that it is there in Uganda, it is much better than the absence of peace at all in Uganda, where people become refugees moving somewhere else. So they prefer to pursue a very dialectic, they need to dialogue, consulting, and see how things can be changed, than using a very direct approach that can cause violence that will also deteriorate the situation in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm conscious that it's getting fairly late. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Look, I'd like to thank you very, very much for your presentation tonight. It was very, very interesting. And it's certainly something that Rotary Club should be getting behind and supporting you in many different ways. So I'm sure we'll be talking to you further. And we know a number of clubs that are very passionate about what is happening currently in South Sudan. So I'll talk to you offline and give you some contacts that might be able to help you as well. So everyone, we'd like to thank you for coming tonight. Much appreciated. And that was a great talk.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.